The recent budget in 2022-23 financial year that represent itself about the boosting those capital expenditure and providing the incentives to promote the domestic manufacturing, which would be consistent with the government Make in India initiative. India will also start to issue those sovereign green bond that could be used to fund those projects that will reduce the carbon intensity. The investors for the second successive year cheers on the budget day for this emphatic manner that the government is looking to make those investments possible to the dream Make in India project, and that is possible using the smart strategy and implementation that declared in the Union Budget Day, and how this will be happen on the dream infrastructure project of 110 lakh crore that will be change the course of the economy in the next 10 years. The India's growth, at least statistically, appeared to be a strong. Financial year 2022, the GDP is pegged at around 9.2%, the highest among all the largest economies around, and growing smartly from a low base in the financial year 21, and the deeper look that reveals not all is well, but the unemployment rate at close to 8% in the December last year. And the budget highlights that's the key important aspect of this recent budget, that the government's capital expenditure outlay in financial year 23 has seen a 35.4%, that is higher than the previous estimates, the previous financial year estimates. And the infrastructure project, the roads, railways and the logistic parts, that is in key and the focus areas for the recent budget. That is the highlights of this budget, and India's transitioning to the carbon neutral economy that gets the momentum. The government to issue those sovereign green bond as a part of this financial year 23, that the market borrowing programs and the production link incentive scheme and the reduction of those input costs across the domestic manufacturing to boost the competitiveness and create valuable employment, and the data centers and the energy storage that get infrastructure asset classifications, allow the firms to access easier credit loan for those incentive schemes, and many other important production linked incentive schemes used in the automobile sector and many other semiconductor chip manufacturing, the renewable energy resources, the electronics and manufacturing devices, all these important sector that is drive those economy, the boosting those Indian economy. All these sectors are implemented and backed by those PLI scheme, that is the government incentive for those production. And the semiconductor shortage recently happened globally, and those demand that has generated for the semiconductor chip and those devices that is and appliances those use those chips. India is also trying to implement those PLI scheme for the semiconductor manufacturing, and that is the Make in India campaign to fulfill those shortage and the demand coverage. And that's a surcharge for the long term capital gain across those assets that capped at 15%. And the government imposes 30% on income tax transfer to the virtual digital asset as a form of digital currency, or a digital asset as a cryptocurrency. Basically, the small businesses that continues to struggle during this recent pandemic, and this required a government push to suggest that it would take the lead and boost the spending, and in terms the jobs and income that move to increase the capital expenditure outlay to that I mentioned. It's a 35.4% to 7.5 lakh crore for the financial year 23, and it's seen as a huge sentiment booster. Besides the focus on those infrastructure spending that will also boost the employment and income and job creation, it will also provide some more time for the private sector capital expenditure. That is previously struggled during this pandemic. Due to this pandemic, overall it appears to be a good long vision budget, optimistic, spending friendly, and that's the ecosystem in India that is quite robust with 46 unicorns that is created in 2021 alone, and the financial service and many other important that is being pegged as a 6% including inflation, that is the important concern in the time of this tough economic situations, and the sustained capital push and the push towards the infrastructure spending and the other positive areas, and the investment aid towards the agri-tech startup to boost the innovation, and the reduction of duties for the input into electronics product and promote those domestic manufacturing and digital banking initiative, among others. And the two main themes that have been infrastructure improvement and the increased self-reliance to the manufacturing and agricultural policy. Looking at the actual response, the private sector in terms of asset utilizations, operating those leverages and initiative to invest in the capital and the capacities that the private sectors attempted to be a considerable element that imported goods, thereby deepening those reliance of self-reliance, that is Atmanirbhar, and the import substitution, that is the government theme and those agenda for the recent budget also have some proposed policies to boost the inclusive development, the green energy, and the digital ecosystem development. Although there are no changes in the income tax slab, the massive 35% jump in the capital expenditure to push the infrastructure project and the strong multiplier effect to achieve around 8.5% GDP growth for the financial year 23, and this made it easier for the market to accept the higher than expected fiscal deficit target of 6.4% the next fiscal. The government also realistic about the target of this investment in this year. This is important because the government does not earn enough to finance its expenses. If the government does not disinvest, it has to either raise the taxes or borrow more. And borrowing more right now means that the taxpayer in the years to come. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.